Guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena Journey 2. Today's video, we're going to be looking at a tier list. Now, this is going to be a basic tier list, guys. This is very, very early, subject to change, depending on the heroes you have. But Noble Tavern, we're going to look at the wish list first that we're building within here. Now, bear with me because a lot of these heroes, I am still learning all of the names. But going through here, this is how we set up the wish list. Now, Sith over and Discord actually kind of worked with me a little bit. I looked at some of the wish lists that he has. I can put a link down to his website down below, but that way you can check it out. Kind of made a tier list out of this, getting a lot of feedback from both the guilds as well as Discord for the players that are into this game and have been playing this game. Let's go ahead and check out the tier list. All right, guys, so here we have the basic look of the tier list. Now, overall, you can see we broke these into a couple different sections. Now, this, again, is based on a lot of the feedback that we have gotten from players. So looking at our S tier, and I did drop the camera out of this so you can really see. First one we have is Vala, so the Swift Shift. Now, she has a global ultimate ability, which has been working incredibly well within formations. I know with a lot of these heroes, we don't have a lot of information, and a lot of players do not have the heroes when they come out to the much stronger heroes. So it is a little bit more difficult to build. Looking also in there is Rowan. Big thing with Rowan, guys, is of course the ultimate ability provides energy, which is huge. We have seen this again and again. Even looking, most of you know he is my absolute favorite AFK Arena character in this game. Still cannot wait to get them. Still does to seem to do incredibly well. Next one we look at is Brutus. Now, of course, Brutus, being a warrior, having an immunity, having a whirlwind, really, really strong. If you guys have fought him within some of the campaign stages, he is very difficult to deal with because of that immunity shield. He does an incredible amount of damage when you do have him built. And then, of course, we look at Smokey and Mirk. So Smokey is probably one of the absolute best support heroes within this game. Working incredibly well with the build. I am loving him. He is actually still the only hero that I have built up that I believe is at the epic level, because it goes elite then epic. Epic is the orange, but he is still the only hero that I have at that epic level. Next one we look at the S class is Iran. Now, him doing damage as a ranger, but the ultimate ability also paralyzes enemies. Now, crowd control in this game, of course, very, very strong when it comes to the PvP aspect. When it comes to the campaign, works incredibly well, which brings us into Granny Danny. Granny right here does, again, very, very strong. This is one of the top tier tanks. Because of the crowd control aspect, has a shielding aspect, but also has an entangling, a crowd control aspect, which does work incredibly well in formations. Again, this is a hero that I fought a couple times, had an incredible difficult time dealing with this hero. The next one we look at is Cecilia. Now, Cecilia, of course, is the summoner that actually summons Mr. Carlisle. Again, very strong if you have fought this hero within a couple different formations. I do not have the ability, or have not had the ability, to get the hero as of right now. But again, this is based on player feedback. This is going to change, guys, as the game progresses, as we start getting into mid-game, late game, when we get to more game modes. This is, of course, going to change. Then the final one here is Igor. So Igor reminds me of Tarnos from AFK Arena. So he actually drops a tombstone and fights from the tombstone, which is super interesting to see. But again, similar to Tarnos in AFK Arena, that they will drop the it'll drop an item, and that is where they actually move to. So looking and moving on to this A tier. Now, the A tier, we get into some of the heroes that, again, could really be top tier, again, depending on who you have. First one is Ella. Now, Ella, of course, is a mage that has crowd control. Now, that is really the big thing, guys, is when it comes to some of the knockbacks, when it comes to some of the crowd control, it's going to be very dependent on the heroes that you do pull in here, on who exactly you're going to be running within formations. That works incredibly well. Now, one of my favorite heroes, guys, is, of course, the next one, which is Valen. So he has been probably the top damage dealer that I have within my team. We're about mid 60s. I think I even have some heroes that are hitting that level 70. But overall, guys, when it comes to the ultimate ability, he goes immune and he does a lot of damage in formations, which I absolutely like, which is very similar to Leica. So Leica, of course, being ranged, and you do have to mix up the heroes. That's one thing that I've realized really quickly within this game, guys, is you do have to mix up the heroes between, you know, the straight combat facing hand to hand, and also the longer range damage dealers like Leica. Leica, of course, has the ability to hit kind of in a big row, which is really strong. Does a lot of damage in there. Also does have kind of that awe ability that we've seen, which buffs up a lot of different heroes. Very strong in combat, guys. I love how she is built and how she is working. Next one we look at is Shakir. So Shakir, again, another ranger, goes into wolf form. This is a hero, again, that a lot of players have said they've utilized as a carry, but it has only been because they did not have any other heroes within the formation. So does, again, has a little bit of control immunity. They reduces the healing, which is good. That is actually what I use Satrena for right now, because again, depending on the heroes that you do have within the formation, can make a big difference. And then similar to our light bearer right here, guys, the Carolina actually does a lot of crowd control with the freezing. Doesn't really have a lot of survivability, so you do have to protect this hero to really get the survivability or get the utility out of this hero. But she does work well, again, with that crowd control aspect, which is the reason why we put her in the A level. Now, looking at the B, we look at Lumont. Now, that, of course, is the Wilder tank. Big thing with him, guys, is a lot of players that use him. He does charge quite a bit. He moves around quite a bit. So if you're running Smokey, most of the time it's out of range. I see the same with the Lucius. A lot of times they just move out of Smokey's range, which makes Smokey super ineffective because of that and moving out of that range. Now, as we continue through the Maulers, guys, the next one we look at is Eddie. Now, one thing with Eddie is when it comes to single target damage, Eddie is doing incredibly well. I've actually been using him in the boss mode that we have right now. Again, by far doing the most damage within that game mode with the corrosive dart ability and also with the heart crusher. When you put in some of the special talents to actually have him attack faster, it works incredibly well within those formations. Then we look at Sylvana. So Sylvana ultimately goes right to the enemy back line. Pretty effective. The problems that I have with her right now is every time that I have attempted to use her, even having it built up quite a bit, she dies. She dies very early, very easy, because again, running Smokey doesn't have the ability to heal her because she is actually running to the back line. And again, that is kind of a different kind of build, because the next hero we look at is Heoin, which is a healer. So it is a support healer for the Wilders. And overall, I feel like if I didn't run Smokey, or if I had a different kind of set of heroes that could have a little bit more range, that could have a little bit more healer, a little bit more utility in that aspect, might be a difference. But Smokey, again, is covering a majority of the battlefield. Only problem with Smokey is if Smokey gets interrupted, of course, it's going to go away. Now we look at Arden. Arden, of course, the king of crowd control, guys. Absolutely love the force of nature and the thorn protection, but also the entangling roots. When it comes to crowd control, we have a couple options in here that we've kind of talked about, but he works incredibly well. Next one, of course, is Thorin. Thorin is a retaliation tank, which I love Thorin and the Thorin cheese within AFK Arena. But overall, again, not having the hero, not being able to test out a lot, the soul retaliation and the soul pack seems to work pretty well. I haven't had any issues when I've been fighting him. But overall, guys, I feel like, again, with the utility and the players getting these heroes, this is going to change. It's going to change quite a bit. Then we look at Moriel, of course, going to be a straight caster. And then we have Satrena. Big thing with Satrena, guys, is she is actually toe-to-toe, so she fights right in the front line. Survivability is an issue, but she does have a good healing reduction, which works. C level, we start getting into Lucius is in there as a tank. Again, he is my primary tank just because I don't have anyone else at this point. So as we continue to build some more heroes, it will work well. Followed by Seth. Overall, Seth, again, some of these heroes just kind of seem to fill in some of the slots. Is a ranger hero that does have the Shadow Strike ability, has the Fever Hunt, and then, of course, the Killer Instinct. Kind of the Life Leech with the Maulers kind of goes hand in hand. And then we look at, of course, our next Graveborn hero. Now, the thing with the Graveborns is they pretty much limited the heroes that we have within the faction, which is pretty sad. But Salazar is the next one, guys. Rain of Blades works pretty good. Soul Drench, again, works pretty well. This is a hero that I recently picked up. Again, kind of the survivability aspect when they get out of a certain range, it does make it a little bit more difficult to keep the heroes alive because again, the range that they get into or the range that they actually move out to, it does make it a little bit more difficult. Next one we look at is Atlanta. Now, this is a similar hero. She's a marksman, similar to what we see with Leica. Does a lot of range damage, which again, you're going to have a blend of the melee damage. You're going to have a blend of the range damage. Overall, guys, she has a little bit of a smaller area, which allows her to move up a little bit more into the enemy range, which I do not like. That is a lot of times when they get burned down in a couple different formations. Now, next hero we look at is, of course, support, which is Damien. This hero I just picked up, he uses a chariot, which is kind of interesting. He won't be hit during battle, but he builds a toy chariot. Again, I'm going to have to see the effectiveness in there as it kind of goes on. Gives a little bit of a haste buff, which could work incredibly well. I want to see him kind of in comparison to Rowan. That's almost what it makes me think of, like when you look at Rowan's cart, is some of the possible utility in the future on where exactly this hero is going to kind of fall into. Next one we look at is, of course, another support, which is Faye. Again, a little bit of a healing, but the healing is a little bit short-lived. It's very, very close, which doesn't make her super effective. That is where a lot of players are seeing the hero actually die out. And then we have Kruger. So this is kind of like your Warwick of this game. So he does have a armor reduction effect, which could be good for the boss modes, but overall it seems like in the campaign, not seeing a lot of utility from players. And again, this is solely based on feedback that we've seen, a lot of different things that we've seen over on Discord, really from the guild, a couple other places. And then we have Marin. Marin, of course, is a marksman, so very similar to what we see with Leica, than what we see with a couple different heroes. Fills a niche if you do have that void. And then looking at our bottom one, guys, we do have our regular heroes right there, which of course is Chippy and Hammy. Not really utilized anymore once you get to a certain point. We have Hogan in there. Hogan is not a super effective kind of off tank, I guess. We haven't seen, again, a lot of utility within Hogan in there. And then a couple other ones like Kafra. I'm not sure if a lot of players are using Kafra. If a lot of players are using, I'm kind of disappointed with looking in the bottom line, but looking at Naru, they made him support, which again is kind of interesting, but I've tried him and haven't had a lot of success with him. Seems like it's been incredibly difficult to get him to work. Now, when it comes to Corin, again, just another kind of warrior hero. If you have Brutus, if you have a couple other formations or a couple other heroes, he does provide a little bit of crowd control, but overall it doesn't seem like a super effective hero. And then, of course, guys, we have the final hero right there, which is right in the middle, which is Enya. Again, this hero, kind of interesting, kind of like Solus, marks an enemy with flowers, does a little bit of damage, but overall we have to see exactly where the damage factor comes in, because it seems like the effectiveness of it could be there, but overall it doesn't seem like we're seeing a huge effectiveness within there. Sorry guys, so that'll do it for our tier list for today. Again, it is super basic, super early when it comes to the build. So let me know how you're utilizing the characters, how the heroes are working out in this game, where you would drop them in the tier list, if we need to move them up and down based on their utility. And as always, thank you guys for watching.